The soft hum of Elon Musk's office was interrupted only by the occasional beep of a notification. His mind, usually preoccupied with the constant whirlwind of his companies, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the billion-dollar decisions that came with them, was momentarily at peace. For a fleeting moment, the weight of the world seemed to be lifted as he sat in his chair, gazing out of the window of his sprawling mansion in California. Yet, this brief respite was about to be broken by something far more unexpected than anything his empire had thrown at him. Elon's 4-year-old son, A-Xii A-12, padded into the room, his small frame barely noticeable against the vastness of the space. His blonde curls bounced with each step, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Elon had always been amazed at how quickly his son had grown. X was a child of few words, but when he spoke, it was often profound, more profound than any tech CEO could ever imagine. "Daddy," X's voice broke the silence, his tiny hands clutching a toy rocket ship, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Do you think the world would be different if we just shared everything we had?" The simplicity of the question hit Elon like a thunderclap. His gaze shifted to his son, taking in his innocent face, not yet jaded by the harsh realities of the world. For a moment, Elon was taken aback. "What do you mean, buddy?" he asked, leaning forward, intrigued. X tilted his head slightly, his small face pensive as he clutched the rocket ship tighter. "Like, if we shared all our toys, and our food, and even our time with others, would the world be different?" Elon blinked. He didn't know how to respond immediately. In the midst of his life, filled with ambitions, profits, and a singular drive to save humanity, he hadn't stopped to think about the deeper questions that mattered. What did it really mean to share? To give everything you had? Was that even possible in a world so focused on competition and individual success? The question hung in the air, an innocent inquiry from a child, but it felt heavier than any business proposal Elon had ever read. His mind raced, but his heart beat slower, as though this question was stirring something deep within him that he had long buried under his work. X, oblivious to the weight his words carried, ran over to the window, holding the rocket ship out like an offering. "I think if we shared everything," he continued, "we would all be happier." Elon watched him, the simplicity of his son's thoughts stirring something deep within him. Here he was, the man who had revolutionized electric cars, who dreamed of colonizing Mars, who had built some of the most advanced technologies the world had ever seen. And yet, here was his 4-year-old son, speaking a truth that was far more profound than anything Elon had ever considered. What would the world look like if we simply shared everything? Elon let the question marinate in his mind. Was this the answer to the problems of the world? He had spent his entire life pushing forward, striving for progress, but had he neglected the importance of connection, of giving, of sharing? Could this be the key to truly changing the world, not just through technology, but through human kindness? He sat back in his chair, staring at the toy rocket in his son's hand. The notion of sharing everything seemed so simple, yet so radical. Could this child, who hadn't yet learned the weight of the world's expectations, have figured out something that adults like him couldn't? "Do you think we could ever make the world like that?" Elon asked, his voice softer than usual. X stopped playing with the rocket and looked up at his father, his eyes bright and sincere. "Maybe not now, but we can try," he said, before turning and running back out of the room, leaving Elon alone with his thoughts. The silence that followed felt deafening. Elon sat there, stunned. His son's words echoed in his mind. It wasn't the first time X had surprised him with his insight, but this one felt different. "Could we try?" Elon repeated quietly to himself. He leaned back in his chair and gazed out of the window. The world outside seemed so vast, so full of endless possibilities that, for the first time in years, seemed to be about more than just conquering the stars or making money. Maybe it was time for a different kind of mission, one that went beyond profits and technological advancement. Before he could delve deeper into his thoughts, Elon's phone buzzed with a reminder. A meeting in 30 minutes. A proposal to approve. The usual routine. But for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel the rush to jump into his work. Instead, he felt a strange pull to reflect on his son's words. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon thought to himself, imagining how others might feel hearing about this sudden shift in his mindset. Maybe the world, like his son had suggested, could be different if more people focused on sharing, on giving instead of always taking. As the minutes passed, the weight of A-Xii's question only grew. Elon had always been driven by a mission to change the world, but what if the real change started with something far simpler, like sharing what we have? For the rest of the day, Elon couldn't shake the thought. It lingered with him as he entered meeting after meeting, his mind distracted, his heart oddly unsettled. The question his son had asked seemed to have shaken him in a way that no tech innovation or business challenge ever had. And so, he made a decision that afternoon. The next time he saw A-Xii, he would ask him more. He would learn from him, this little philosopher in his own home, and perhaps, just perhaps, this wisdom would lead him to a new understanding of what it truly meant to change the world. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elon sat on the balcony of his home, staring out at the sprawling city before him. The world, with all its problems and challenges, seemed so small in the face of his son's simple question. Could sharing everything really change the world? Could it be that something so pure and simple had the power to reshape everything he thought he knew about success? Elon Musk had built a legacy out of innovation and ambition, but maybe, just maybe, it was time to build a new one. One where sharing, compassion, and connection were at the core. And with that thought, he realized something. His son, at just 4 years old, might just be the one to show him the way. Elon Musk had always been a man of vision, someone whose ambition seemed to know no bounds. His childhood in Pretoria, South Africa, was far from the typical American dream, yet it was there that the seeds of his relentless drive were planted. Raised by a mother who was a dietitian and model, and a father who was a tough, somewhat distant engineer, Elon learned early on that success didn't come easily. His father, Elon Musk, was a brilliant but emotionally unavailable man, and their relationship was strained to say the least. Elon often found himself alone in his thoughts, retreating to books, his only escape from the harshness of his home life. He devoured science fiction novels, dreaming of faraway places and the possibility of life beyond Earth. But growing up wasn't easy. He was bullied relentlessly for his awkward appearance and bookish nature. However, rather than letting this define him, Elon chose to retreat into his mind, developing an intense desire to prove himself to the world. By the time he was 12, Elon had already taught himself computer programming, and he sold his first software, a simple game called Blaster, to a computer magazine for $500. This was just the beginning, and from that point forward, his ambition grew exponentially. But no matter how successful he became, there was always something missing, something he could never quite figure out. It wasn't until much later in life, when he became a father, that the realization would finally hit him: success didn't mean anything if he couldn't balance it with meaningful relationships. Becoming a father was something Elon had always dreamed of. His children were, in his mind, the ultimate experiment in learning how to be human. He had married Justine Musk in 2000, and together they had 6 children. Tragically, their firstborn, Nevada, passed away from sudden infant death syndrome, SIDS, when he was just 10 weeks old. The pain of losing a child was something no parent should ever have to endure, and it left a scar on Elon that would never fully heal. But life went on, and he and Justine had 5 more children, twin boys, Griffin and Xavier, and triplet sons, Damien, Saxon, and Kai. Elon was never the traditional father. He was always busy with his many ventures, but he did his best to be involved in their lives. Despite his demanding schedule, he tried to be present for the milestones, the birthdays, and the small moments that children remember for a lifetime. Though he loved his kids, Elon had always struggled with balancing his work and family life. His mind constantly raced, consumed by his never-ending list of projects. From founding Zip2, to creating PayPal, to Tesla and SpaceX, Elon's days were a blur of meetings, negotiations, and non-stop travel. For a long time, he had been the epitome of the workaholic, consumed by the idea that his purpose was tied to his success and ability to change the world. But there was always a quiet voice in the back of his mind that wondered if he was getting it wrong. Was he missing something fundamental? Was he so focused on achieving his monumental goals that he was overlooking the importance of simply being there, truly there, for his children? It was his second marriage to Tallulah Riley that brought some of these questions to the forefront. Despite his success, Elon's personal life continued to experience turmoil. He had married Riley in 2010, only to divorce in 2012, then remarry in 2013, before separating again in 2016. The strain of balancing work, relationships, and the constant pressure of running multiple companies was taking its toll. Throughout these years, he had always been focused on the future, on Mars, on electric cars, on changing the course of humanity. But in his pursuit of something so grand, he began to realize that his children were growing up without him truly understanding them, without him truly seeing them. They were part of his life, but were they really a part of his world? It wasn't until his son, A-Xii A-12, was born that things began to shift. X, a name that seemed as unconventional as his father's life, was different. The moment Elon first held him in his arms, he knew that he would be different. There was something about this child that made him pause, made him look inward, and reconsider the path he had been walking. X was the product of his relationship with musician Claire Boucher, known professionally as Grimes. The couple had made headlines for their unusual and often cryptic relationship, and the name A-Xii A-12 itself raised eyebrows across the world. But despite their differences, Grimes and Elon shared a deep understanding of each other, a mutual respect for each other's creativity and vision. Raising a child with someone so unconventional, who was also a major force in the world of music and culture, brought new perspectives into Elon's life. X, with his curious nature and playful demeanor, seemed to have a way of putting Elon's complex world into perspective, forcing him to slow down and ask the questions that he had long ignored. What was the point of all his accomplishments if he wasn't there to experience the joy of his children's lives? Why was he so determined to save humanity when perhaps the most important thing he could do was to truly understand his own family? And then came the question from X that changed everything. "Daddy, do you think the world would be different if we just shared everything we had?" The words had been simple, but they had rattled Elon to his core. How had he gotten so caught up in the world of technology, money, and ambition that he had forgotten the one thing that truly mattered? His son's words were a reminder that the answers to some of life's most important questions don't come from boardrooms or rockets, but from the small, quiet moments with the people who matter most. Elon had spent years trying to conquer the impossible, always looking to the future. But now, perhaps for the first time, he realized that the most important discovery was right in front of him, in the heart of his family, and in the innocence of his child's wisdom. This new path that was beginning to take shape in Elon's heart wasn't just about technology or business, it was about learning how to be present, how to truly listen, and how to prioritize the relationships that really mattered. And perhaps, in a world so focused on success, it was time to shift gears. It was time to start asking the right questions, not just about the future of technology, but about the future of humanity itself. The days following X's question were unlike any Elon had experienced before. His mind, usually fixated on Tesla's latest innovations or SpaceX's ambitious goals for Mars, now found itself distracted by something far more profound, the notion of sharing everything, of taking a step back from the competitive, success-driven world he had created. As the CEO of multiple groundbreaking companies, Elon was constantly surrounded by brilliant minds, all of whom were equally driven by the pursuit of progress. Yet, in the back of his mind, a nagging thought began to take root: could he, the visionary behind some of the world's most transformative technologies, truly change the world without first changing himself? Could he reconcile his deep need to push boundaries with the simple idea of sharing and connection that his 4-year-old son had brought up? Elon sat in a conference room with his closest advisors, listening to the endless drone of discussions about Tesla's next quarterly earnings and SpaceX's plans for the next Falcon launch. As he absent-mindedly stared at the projection of graphs and statistics, the weight of his son's words pressed heavier on his chest. X had asked a question that Elon couldn't seem to escape, one that wasn't about profits, growth, or technology but about something far simpler: kindness, generosity, and humanity. But Elon was no stranger to conflict, especially the inner kind. His whole life had been built on the pursuit of excellence, of finding solutions to problems no one else could even begin to imagine. His drive to make humanity a multiplanetary species had led him to neglect aspects of his personal life that he now realized were just as important, if not more so. The first conflict surfaced in an unexpected way: his team at Tesla. They were pushing the envelope with electric vehicle technology, aiming to produce affordable cars that could replace the internal combustion engine for good. But there was an inherent tension in the way Elon operated. His philosophy had always been about accelerating the future, sometimes at the cost of immediate sacrifice. He demanded perfection, often driving his employees harder than any of them had ever imagined. His intensity, which had made him a visionary in the tech world, was now becoming a double-edged sword. "Mr. Musk, we're ahead of schedule, but we're pushing the team too hard," one of his lead engineers, James, spoke up during a meeting, his voice tense. "The long hours, the relentless deadlines, it's starting to take a toll on productivity and morale. We've got to take a step back." Elon's eyes narrowed. He had heard this before. The relentless pace was part of his formula for success. "We don't have time to take a step back," he retorted. "Every day we waste is a day that brings us further away from changing the world. If you want to make history, you have to be willing to push harder than anyone else." But James wasn't backing down. "That's the problem, Elon. We're so focused on pushing the limits of technology that we're forgetting about the people who make it all happen. We're burning out the very people who are going to get us to Mars. If we want sustainable success, we have to make sure that we're taking care of the people who matter most, the ones who make this vision a reality." The word stung more than Elon was willing to admit. His mind immediately turned back to X's innocent question: "Do you think the world would be different if we just shared everything we had?" Was this what X meant? Had he been so consumed with progress, with pushing humanity forward, that he had neglected the human side of his mission? The very people he relied on for his success, were they being left behind in the race for innovation? Later that evening, after a long day filled with discussions of rockets and electric vehicles, Elon sat alone in his office, his thoughts drifting to his family. X's face flashed in his mind. He remembered the boy's curious eyes, the hopeful way he had asked his question. A deep sense of guilt began to creep in. Was this really what it took to change the world? Unrelenting, single-minded ambition at the expense of everything else? The next morning, Elon found himself standing at the window, staring out over the sprawling landscape. The idea of sharing, of slowing down and reassessing his priorities, gnawed at him. Was it too late to change his approach? Was it even possible to balance his vision for the future with the simple human need for connection and kindness? As he prepared for yet another high-stakes meeting, he realized that the tension inside him wasn't just about balancing work and family. It was the realization that his drive for success, for world-changing innovation, might actually be causing more harm than good. In his pursuit of a better future, had he missed the opportunity to experience the joy of the present? Was there a way to achieve greatness and still hold on to the values that mattered most? The conflict deepened, with every passing day reminding Elon that change wasn't just about altering the world around him. It was about transforming himself, about embracing the very human elements that his mind had so often ignored. But how could he begin to do that? Could he be the same relentless leader who pushed boundaries, but also embrace a new philosophy of kindness and generosity? At Tesla, the tension among the leadership team began to grow as well. Elon's absence from key meetings, distracted by his inner conflict, led to disagreements and a lack of cohesion in decision-making. Some employees voiced concerns that the company was moving too fast without a clear, unified direction. The pressure was mounting on Elon, and he knew that a reckoning was coming. He would have to choose, continue down the path of relentless ambition or find a way to reframe success in a more balanced, human way. At home, things weren't much better. His relationships with his children, especially with A-Xii, were becoming strained. Elon had always been distant, wrapped up in his world of work. He knew that if he didn't address the growing disconnect in his personal life, it could affect his ability to be the father he wanted to be. But how could he change the way he lived his life when the world was watching him? How could he prioritize sharing, kindness, and love without sacrificing his drive to create a legacy? The next few weeks were a blur of internal conflict, as Elon struggled to reconcile the two opposing forces in his life, his insatiable ambition to change the world and his desire to be a better father, a better human being. As Elon reflected on his son's question, he realized that he was standing at a crossroads. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain: this journey was going to require more than just technological innovation. It was going to demand that he face the deepest parts of himself and decide whether he was willing to embrace the simple wisdom of his 4-year-old son, the wisdom that just might change everything. Elon's thoughts churned day and night as the tension between his two worlds grew ever more intense. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the Boring Company, all of his ambitious projects seemed to be spiraling forward at a pace that was nearly impossible to manage. But with every late-night meeting and every impossible deadline, the question that A-Xii had posed echoed louder in his mind. Could the world truly be different if they just shared everything they had? Could he live his truth as a visionary and a father without sacrificing the happiness of those around him? It was a question Elon couldn't shake, no matter how many rocket launches he oversaw or how many groundbreaking technologies he developed. The power of A-Xii's words had ignited a fire within him, a fire that burned with the desire to understand the true meaning of success. Was it really all about building companies that would leave an indelible mark on the world, or was there something more to it, something deeper that he had missed all these years? In the midst of his internal struggle, an opportunity came in an unexpected form, a quiet weekend retreat at his private compound, far from the demands of his empire. Elon decided to take some time off, something that felt almost foreign to him. It wasn't easy, he was always tethered to his work, constantly juggling meetings and long-term visions. But this time, he felt a strange pull toward introspection. He had reached a crossroads, and if he didn't take a step back, he might never find the answers he so desperately sought. On the way to the compound, Elon drove with his thoughts racing, and the silence in the car felt suffocating. He wasn't used to this kind of pause. The relentless pace of his life had left him with little room to just be present in the moment. But as he drove along the winding road, he began to let the quiet seep in. For the first time in what felt like forever, Elon gave himself permission to simply breathe. At the compound, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the night settled in, Elon found himself standing by a crackling fire pit. The flames danced in the cool night air, their rhythmic movements offering a strange sense of peace. Alone, with only the crackling of the fire to accompany him, he felt a wave of vulnerability wash over him. He was no longer just the billionaire entrepreneur. He was a father, a son, a man who had spent decades chasing an ideal that had, in many ways, left him empty inside. It was during this quiet moment that his thoughts drifted back to his children. He thought of Griffin and Xavier, of Damien, Saxon, and Kai. Each of them, at one point or another, had tried to break through the wall of ambition he had built around himself. And yet, they always seemed to fade into the background as he drove forward, ever hungry for his next big achievement. He remembered the little things, how Griffin had once tried to show him his latest art project and how Elon had nodded distractedly, his mind elsewhere. How A-Xii had once asked him why he was always on the phone and never fully present. The guilt gnawed at him. Suddenly, Elon felt it, the weight of all the moments he had missed, the simple joys of being a father. The rocket launches, the patents, the billion-dollar deals, none of it could replace the small, fleeting moments that would never come again. He had tried to change the world, but in doing so, he had neglected the one thing that had always mattered most, his connection to those who loved him. And then it clicked. His journey, the one that had always been about technological progress and breaking barriers, wasn't the journey that would bring him peace. The real journey was inward, to reconnect with the things he had overlooked. What A-Xii had asked him was more than just a child's curiosity, it was a deep, fundamental truth about life that he had been too busy to see. The fire burned steadily as Elon made a decision. He wasn't going to abandon his work, far from it. He still believed in the power of technology to change the world, to bring about a future where humanity could thrive on other planets. But now, he knew that he needed to approach his work with a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about building rockets or electric cars. It was about building the kind of world where his children could grow up surrounded by love, kindness, and connection. It was about learning to share his time, share his attention, share his love, in a way that went beyond the conventional metrics of success. The next morning, after a fitful sleep filled with restless dreams of rockets and families, Elon began to plan his next steps. He would have to be more intentional with his time. He would have to learn how to create a balance between work and family, between the ambition that had fueled him and the love that now seemed like the missing link. It wasn't going to be easy. The world would continue to demand more from him than ever before. But he couldn't go back to the way things were. At the heart of it all, Elon realized that the real measure of success was not how many companies he could build or how many stars he could conquer, but how many lives he could touch. How could he inspire his children and the world if he didn't first learn how to be present, how to be fully involved in the lives of those closest to him? With a new determination, Elon returned to his world, but this time, he was determined to see things differently. He would meet with his teams, but now, the conversations would include not only plans for the future but also discussions about how to create a culture of respect, empathy, and shared vision. His employees, the people who had made his empire possible, would no longer be just numbers on a balance sheet. They would be individuals with dreams, struggles, and lives of their own. As for his family, Elon promised himself that he would work harder to be the father his children deserved. He would be there, really there, for the birthdays, the first steps, the art projects, and the simple moments of connection that had always been right in front of him. He couldn't change the past, but he could reshape the future, one small step at a time. It was in this quiet moment of realization, surrounded by the calm of the night and the warmth of the fire, that Elon understood the true meaning of success. It wasn't about the money or the fame. It wasn't about Mars or Tesla. It was about love, about being present, about sharing everything he had, not just his wealth, but his time, his attention, and his heart. This was the journey he had to take, a journey inward, to become the man and the father he was meant to be. It had been weeks since Elon had returned from the retreat, but his mind and heart were still processing the monumental shift he had begun to make. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. His world had always been one of relentless progress, where every decision was a move towards something greater. Now, he was standing at a crossroads, forced to reconcile his powerful ambition with a more grounded, human approach to life. He had spent countless hours rethinking how he could balance his drive with his desire to be present for his family. But as his life continued to unfold, he began to realize that finding peace with this new vision wasn't going to be as simple as he had hoped. In the weeks following his retreat, Elon had made a conscious effort to be more involved with his children. He attended more family dinners, took part in school events, and even went on weekend trips with them, something he hadn't done nearly enough in the past. Yet, the more he tried to engage with them, the more complicated things seemed to get. One evening, after a particularly long day at Tesla, Elon returned home to find Xavier sitting in the living room, surrounded by his art supplies. A-Xii had always been drawn to creativity, a trait that Elon had admired but never quite understood. He had always seen it as secondary to the technical, logical pursuits that drove him. But now, as he watched his son's face light up with excitement as he explained his latest drawing, something in Elon's chest tightened. "Dad, look at this," A-Xii said, holding up a vibrant sketch of a rocket, but not just any rocket. It was a rocket surrounded by a swirling, colorful aura, with stars bursting from its tail like fireworks. "This is how I see your rocket. It's not just metal and fuel, it's full of wonder." Elon paused, his breath catching in his throat. This wasn't just any drawing. It was an interpretation of his life's work, filtered through the eyes of a child, unencumbered by the weight of numbers, competition, or ambition. In X's drawing, the rocket wasn't just a tool for progress, it was a symbol of hope, a beacon of joy, and a dream that reached far beyond the stars. Dad, do you ever wonder what it would feel like if we just shared everything? I mean, what if we didn't have to keep things all to ourselves? X's voice was soft, almost contemplative, as if he was waiting for Elon to truly hear him, to understand the question he had asked weeks earlier. Elon stood frozen, the weight of X's words pressing down on him. It wasn't just a child's curiosity anymore. This was a profound, childlike wisdom that cut straight to the heart of everything Elon had been grappling with. In that moment, he saw his own life, the life he had built around success, wealth, and ambition, through a new lens. The world he had fought so hard to create now seemed incomplete, devoid of the connection and joy that X's simple question had revealed to him. Elon began, his voice shaky with emotion, I've spent my whole life trying to create a future for the world. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to make space for the people who matter most. I've been so focused on progress, on reaching new frontiers, that I lost sight of the people I love. X looked up at his father, his wide eyes full of understanding. But you're here now, right? That's what matters. You don't have to change everything all at once. Just start sharing with us more. Start with us. It was as if a veil had been lifted. For the first time, Elon realized the truth he had been avoiding. His ambition wasn't the problem, it was the way he had been using it, at the cost of everything else. The world wasn't just about the work he did or the legacy he would leave behind. It was about the connections he made along the way, the love he shared, and the impact he had on those closest to him. As the evening wore on, Elon spent time with his children, talking and laughing in a way that felt genuine and fulfilling. The night was simple, but it was everything he had been missing, the joy of being present, of fully experiencing the love and the moments that mattered. For the first time in a long time, Elon felt the weight of his success shift. It wasn't about what he had achieved, it was about what he had to give, and how he could share it with the people who mattered most. But just as things were beginning to feel right, a call came that pulled Elon back into the storm of his work. It was an urgent message from Tesla's board of directors. There were issues with the production lines, delays that could threaten the entire company's goals for the upcoming year. The problem was big, and it couldn't be ignored. Elon's heart sank. He knew that the company needed him, but at that moment, he was faced with a gut-wrenching choice. Could he continue to sacrifice his personal life for the sake of his professional life? Could he go back to his old ways, driving himself and his team harder to achieve his vision, even at the cost of his relationships? Or had the moment he shared with X, the moment of emotional clarity, opened his eyes to something bigger, something more important? He looked over at X, who was quietly playing with his toys, unaware of the monumental decision his father was facing. Elon's mind raced, but his heart was clear. He had made a promise to himself and to his children. He couldn't go back to the way things were. X, he called softly, walking over to his son. You were right. I've been focused on the wrong things for too long. But I'm not going to let that happen anymore. I'm going to start sharing more, with you, with the people I care about, with the world. X looked up, his face breaking into a grin. I knew you'd get it, Dad. Elon smiled, the weight of his decision settling in his chest. It wasn't just about finding balance between work and family anymore. It was about creating a life that felt whole, a life where ambition and love coexisted. And it was a journey that he was just beginning to understand. As Elon took a deep breath, ready to face the challenges ahead, he knew one thing for sure. The path to greatness wasn't just about reaching new heights. It was about the people you lift up along the way. The days following that pivotal evening with X were both challenging and transformative for Elon. He faced an internal tug-of-war, constantly balancing the deep-rooted need to be present in his children's lives with the relentless demands of his company's. His mind often wandered back to the feeling of clarity he had experienced that night, the moment when he realized the true cost of his single-minded pursuit of success. He knew that he couldn't keep living as if the only thing that mattered was his legacy in the business world. Yet, he also knew that his work, his mission to push humanity forward, wasn't something he could abandon. It was in his DNA, a part of who he was. But now, more than ever, he understood that the way forward needed to be different. He needed to carve out space for the people who mattered most to him, without losing sight of the bigger picture. The first step came with a decision that surprised even him: he would be reducing his involvement in day-to-day operations at Tesla and SpaceX. Instead of overseeing every project and micromanaging the smallest details, Elon delegated responsibilities to trusted leaders within his companies, giving them more freedom to lead while he focused on his personal life. The move was bold, especially given how accustomed everyone was to Elon's hands-on approach. But in his heart, Elon knew it was the right thing to do. That decision rippled through his companies. The board of Tesla was cautious at first, questioning his level of commitment to the company. But they quickly saw that Elon's new approach brought a new energy. Instead of feeling like a burden, his absence allowed others to step up, bringing fresh ideas and perspectives to the table. It became clear that his leadership wasn't defined by his presence in every meeting, but by the vision he had set into motion years ago. In his personal life, Elon's newfound clarity led to a series of small but meaningful changes. He started making time for his children, not just in the way that a busy parent might carve out an hour here and there, but with intention. He would take Griffin and A-Xii to the park, not as a mere escape from his work, but as an opportunity to truly connect with them. He'd attend school plays, dance recitals, and art exhibitions, not out of obligation but because he wanted to be there for the moments that mattered to them. His relationship with Grimes, too, began to shift. They spent more quiet evenings together, talking not about business or the future of Mars, but about their shared hopes for the future, for themselves and for their children. It wasn't perfect, and there were still many hurdles ahead, but Elon knew that he was learning how to be more present, how to give more of himself without sacrificing his dreams. As weeks passed, the changes within Elon became increasingly evident. He began to see his work not as the entirety of his identity, but as one part of a much larger picture. Yes, he was still a visionary, still the founder of world-changing companies, but he was also a father, a partner, and a friend. The balance wasn't easy to achieve, but it was real, and it felt right. One Sunday afternoon, months after that defining conversation with A-Xii, Elon sat at the dinner table with his family, a rare occurrence in the past. As they laughed and joked over their meal, Elon felt a warmth spread through his chest, a sense of fulfillment that had eluded him for so long. There were no grand speeches or revelations, it was simply the quiet, powerful feeling of connection. It was the first time in years that he truly felt whole. A-Xii looked up at him, his face full of mischief. "Dad, what do you think? Will you build a rocket that'll take us to the moon next?" Elon smiled, his heart full of pride. "One day, buddy. One day. But remember, we don't just go to the moon to get there. We go to the moon to learn, to share what we've discovered, and to build a future that everyone can be a part of." A-Xii nodded thoughtfully. "Like how you're sharing your time with us now?" he asked. Elon's smile widened. "Exactly. It was a simple conversation, but it was the kind that mattered most." In that moment, Elon realized that everything he had been searching for, all the answers to his inner conflict, had been right in front of him. His journey wasn't just about creating new worlds on Mars or pushing the boundaries of technology. It was about creating a world where his children, his family, and the people around him could thrive, together. The truth was, Elon had already accomplished the impossible. He had built companies that had revolutionized industries, and in doing so, had proven that humanity could accomplish anything if they set their minds to it. But now, he was learning that the greatest achievement of all was not in the success of his companies, but in the relationships he nurtured, the love he gave, and the legacy of kindness and connection he could leave behind for his children. As the evening wore on, and the laughter of his family filled the room, Elon felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The road ahead was still uncertain, and the demands of his companies would always be there. But now, he understood that true success wasn't measured by how far you reached, but by how deeply you connected along the way. In the end, Elon had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that in the pursuit of greatness, the greatest gift you can give is the love and time you share with others. And that was a gift that would last far longer than any rocket, car, or machine could ever. As he tucked his children into bed that night, Elon whispered a quiet promise to himself, to never forget what truly mattered. He had always wanted to change the world. But now, he knew that the best way to do that was by starting with the people he loved most. The days that followed Elon's shift in focus were filled with both optimism and struggle. The internal changes he had made were already starting to impact the way he saw the world. His children had noticed, and they were the first ones to embrace the shift wholeheartedly. But the outside world, his companies, his colleagues, and even the media, was watching to see if Elon Musk, the titan of tech, could really change his ways. For years, Elon had lived a life of extremes, late nights designing rockets, days spent battling the ever-present demands of the Tesla production line, and months spent juggling multiple projects at once. It had been the way he knew how to work, and it had earned him accolades and a place in history. But now, the old routines no longer felt satisfying. He had realized that no matter how many records he broke or how many rockets he launched into space, the one thing that could never be reclaimed was the time spent away from his loved ones. No business venture could ever replace the joy of seeing his children grow or the love of his family. One evening, while walking through the backyard with Grimes, they spoke about the profound shifts they were both experiencing in their lives. It was rare for them to talk so openly. Usually, their conversations revolved around future plans, technology, and the kind of world they hoped to build, but tonight, it was different. "I think you've been right all along," Elon said, his voice soft and vulnerable. "I've been living in a world of innovation and disruption, but I forgot that the world I truly want to change starts at home. I never stopped to think about what matters in my own life." Grimes looked at him, her expression a mixture of surprise and understanding. "I've always known you had a good heart, Elon. But now it feels like you're seeing that side of yourself for the first time too." He paused, gazing out at the starry sky. It was clear tonight, almost too clear, and the stars seemed to shimmer with possibilities, just as the opportunities for change seemed endless. "I'm scared, you know," he confessed, almost as if speaking to the night itself. "Scared of failing again, of going back to what I know. The pressure is so overwhelming sometimes. I keep wondering if I'll lose everything I've built if I pull back too much." Grimes reached out, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "The pressure has always been there, Elon. But now, you're not just doing it for yourself anymore. You're doing it for us, our kids, our future together. The way forward might not be easy, but it's the only way that feels right." Elon nodded, taking in her words. "It feels like I'm standing on the edge of something. Something new, but uncertain." "You're standing on the edge of who you're meant to be," Grimes said softly, her words grounding him. "And that's a much stronger foundation than any company you've built. It's just a matter of believing in it." Elon let out a long breath. The conversation with Grimes had given him clarity, a reminder that there was nothing more powerful than love, trust, and shared purpose. He wasn't giving up on his dreams or his mission, but he was learning to integrate them into a life that honored what mattered most. The following week, he made another key decision. Instead of attending a high-profile tech conference in Europe, Elon chose to spend the week in California with his children. They went hiking in the hills, swam in the ocean, and spent entire afternoons just talking. It was simple, yet in its simplicity, he felt a deep satisfaction he hadn't experienced in years. During their hikes, A-Xii began to share his thoughts more openly, his childlike wisdom cutting through the complexities of life. He was no longer just Elon's son, but his little guide, offering insights that made Elon reflect on his own experiences. One day, while looking out over a vast valley below them, A-Xii asked a question that stopped Elon in his tracks. "Dad," A-Xii began, his voice thoughtful, do you think we could ever make the world a place where everyone has enough? Enough food, enough happiness, enough love? Elon looked down at his son, stunned by the simplicity and depth of the question. His instinct was to launch into a lecture about supply chains, sustainable energy, and the tech innovations he hoped to create. But instead, he found himself silent for a moment, pondering the truth behind the question. You know, X, I think that's the real challenge we face. Not just getting to Mars, but making the Earth a place where people feel they have enough. Enough of what matters. And that's what I've been missing all these years. He paused, looking out over the valley. I've been so focused on solving the big problems, energy, space travel, colonizing other planets, that I've forgotten the importance of taking care of the little things. The people, the connections. X smiled up at him, as if the answer was self-evident. Maybe we should start with our family, he said simply. Elon laughed, a lightness filling his chest. Maybe you're right, buddy. Maybe that's where we need to start. In that moment, Elon understood that true change, the kind that mattered, had to start with the smallest gestures. It had to begin with those closest to him. He didn't need to change the world in a single giant leap. He needed to change his world first, and in doing so, show others the power of what could be done when people truly cared. As the days turned into weeks, Elon continued to strengthen the relationships in his life, creating a foundation based on love, presence, and shared purpose. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt. But with every passing day, he felt himself becoming more aligned with the kind of person he truly wanted to be. At work, his colleagues and teams noticed a subtle change in Elon as well. While he still held the same high standards and maintained his visionary drive, there was a new level of compassion and openness to his leadership. He didn't demand perfection from those around him. Instead, he encouraged creativity, allowed people to take risks, and celebrated the effort and growth that came from every setback. His role in Tesla, SpaceX, and other ventures had shifted from that of a micromanager to a guide, a mentor who empowered those around him to thrive. And it was working. His teams were more inspired than ever, tackling ambitious projects with renewed passion. Elon realized that, in stepping back from the overwhelming weight of constant control, he had become the leader he always wanted to be, not through dominance, but through empathy, trust, and understanding. With his family and his companies flourishing, Elon began to see the seeds of a new kind of future. A future where success wasn't defined by the number of rockets launched or the profits made, but by the quality of life he was building with those he loved, and the positive impact he could leave behind for generations to come. And for the first time in a long while, Elon Musk knew, deep in his heart, that he had truly found his new horizon. As the weeks passed, the changes in Elon's life became more tangible, and he began to see how his newfound approach was affecting not just his personal world, but his company's as well. The decision to step back from his traditional role of overseeing every tiny detail allowed others to step forward and take ownership, which sparked creativity and fresh ideas across Tesla, SpaceX, and his other ventures. But even with all the success, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. It wasn't about business, it was something more profound, something intangible. He had everything he could have ever dreamed of, a thriving empire, a loving family, a legacy that was sure to endure. Yet there were moments when he still felt like something wasn't quite right. It was during one of his many quiet evenings spent reflecting on the porch of his California home that Elon had the realization that had been eluding him. The very thing he'd been chasing for so long, perfection, was what was holding him back from truly finding peace. The idea of perfection had always been central to his worldview. Whether it was designing the perfect electric car or creating the flawless space mission, perfection had been the measure of success for him. But now, in this quieter moment, surrounded by the gentle rustling of the trees and the peaceful hum of the night, Elon understood that the pursuit of perfection was not only unrealistic, it was also unhealthy. Maybe it's time I let go of that constant need for everything to be flawless, he thought, sipping his drink slowly, contemplating the weight of the realization. In truth, the cracks in his life, the imperfections, were the very things that made it meaningful. His relationships, his companies, his dreams, none of them were without flaws. But those flaws didn't detract from the beauty of what he was building, they added depth and complexity. The idea of chasing an unattainable ideal had kept him on a relentless path, always moving forward but never truly arriving. It was time to embrace the imperfections, to accept them as part of the journey, not obstacles to overcome. The next morning, after a restless night filled with reflection, Elon decided to speak with Grimes. He wanted to share his thoughts with her, his realizations, his fears, and his hopes for the future. They met in the kitchen, where the smell of coffee filled the air. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft, golden light across the room. Elon sat down across from her, his expression serious but calm. "I've been thinking a lot," he began, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "About everything, about my work, our life together, and the kids. I think I've been so focused on being perfect for so long that I missed the point." Grimes set her coffee down and looked at him with concern. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been chasing this idea that everything has to be flawless," he continued. "I wanted to build the perfect company, the perfect future for humanity, and even the perfect family. But I've realized that perfection doesn't exist. It's all about the process, the journey. And the messiness, the failures, the small victories, that's what really matters. Not the end result." Grimes smiled softly, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Elon, I've always known you were perfectionistic, but I think it's beautiful that you're learning to let go. The most meaningful moments in life aren't the ones that go perfectly. They're the ones where you stumble, fall, and pick yourself back up." Elon leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply. "I've spent so much time focused on the bigger picture that I've missed the small moments. The times with the kids, with you, those are the moments that matter. And I don't want to miss them anymore." Grimes nodded, reaching for his hand across the table. "It's not too late, Elon. You're here now. And that's what matters." Over the next few days, Elon began to incorporate these new realizations into his daily life. He let go of the need for control and perfection in every aspect of his work. At Tesla, he gave his leadership teams more autonomy, trusting them to make decisions that aligned with his vision. At SpaceX, he took a step back from the minutiae, focusing on the long-term goals of interplanetary exploration while empowering others to innovate and problem-solve in their own ways. At home, things became more relaxed, more genuine. Elon began to engage with his children in ways he hadn't before. He wasn't just a father who was physically present but emotionally distant. He became involved in their lives in a deeper way, asking them about their thoughts, their dreams, and even their frustrations. He learned to listen in a way he hadn't before, letting go of the instinct to always have an answer or a solution. One afternoon, while playing catch with A-Xii in the backyard, Elon had another conversation that would stay with him for years to come. "Dad," A-Xii said, throwing the ball lightly toward him, "do you ever get scared?" Elon paused, the ball coming to him effortlessly, but his mind caught on the question. He had always thought of himself as someone fearless, someone driven by the belief that anything could be accomplished through hard work and innovation. But now, faced with the simplicity of A-Xii's question, Elon realized that fear had always been a part of him. "I do get scared," Elon admitted, throwing the ball back gently. "I'm scared of making mistakes. I'm scared of failing. But you know what? That fear doesn't have to stop me. It's just part of the journey." A-Xii smiled brightly, clearly satisfied with his father's answer. "I think that's okay, Dad. It's okay to be scared." For the first time in a long while, Elon felt a sense of relief wash over him. He didn't have to be perfect. He didn't have to have all the answers. It was enough to try, to learn from his failures, and to show up, both as a leader and as a father. As the sun set that evening, casting a warm glow over his home, Elon stood in the backyard, watching his children play. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the imperfections that had shaped him, for the mistakes he had made, and for the wisdom that had come from them. He knew that the road ahead would still be filled with challenges, but now, he felt ready to face them, ready to build a life and a legacy that wasn't just defined by his achievements, but by the love and connections that anchored him. Elon Musk was no longer just a visionary chasing perfection. He was a man who had embraced the messy, imperfect beauty of life, and in doing so, had finally found the balance he had been searching for all along. Elon's decision to embrace imperfection and let go of his relentless pursuit of perfection was not just a shift in his personal life, but a recalibration of the way he approached his relationships. With his family, there was an unspoken understanding that the road ahead would be filled with both triumphs and setbacks, but that together, they would navigate it with openness, honesty, and mutual support. But the road to healing wasn't always smooth, and Elon soon realized that rebuilding trust with those closest to him, especially his colleagues at Tesla and SpaceX, would take time. While he had made great strides in reconnecting with his family, the professional side of his life still demanded a lot of attention, and not everyone was convinced that his shift in priorities was sustainable. At Tesla, the team had come to rely on Elon's presence and decision-making. His long hours and hands-on approach had become part of the company's culture, and some employees were hesitant about what might happen if he started pulling back. They respected him, but they were unsure about his new focus on balance and family. The question hung in the air: could Elon continue to be the visionary leader they had followed for so long, while also taking the time he needed to be a present father and partner? The first test of this new approach came when Tesla was faced with a critical decision regarding a new project. Elon had been involved in every step of the project, and his insight had been crucial in its development. However, with his newfound perspective, he knew that stepping back was the right move, both for the company and for his own well-being. As he sat down with his leadership team to discuss the next steps, there was a palpable tension in the room. Elon had always been the driving force behind Tesla's success, but now, it was clear that he was beginning to trust his team more and more. "I know that many of you have seen the changes I've been making in my life," Elon began, his voice calm but firm. "And I want to assure you all that I'm still fully committed to Tesla and to the work we're doing here. But I've realized that I need to step back a little bit. I need to give you the space to take ownership and lead with the same level of passion that we've always had." The room fell silent. It was clear that Elon's decision was going to be a tough pill for some to swallow. After all, his intense focus and high expectations had set the tone for Tesla's success. Many of his team members weren't sure if they could continue at the same pace without him driving them. Elon continued, "I know this might be unsettling, but I believe in all of you. I've seen the dedication and creativity you bring to the table. And I trust that you can keep pushing forward. We've built something incredible, and I'm confident that you'll continue to take it even further." A long pause followed, but then one of the senior engineers, Maria, spoke up. "Elon, I appreciate your trust in us, and I know you're still committed to Tesla. But I have to admit, I'm worried. Tesla wouldn't be what it is today without your leadership. How can we be sure that stepping back won't cause us to lose momentum?" Elon nodded thoughtfully, acknowledging the concern. "I understand your worry, Maria. I've been in your shoes. But I've come to realize that leadership isn't about doing everything yourself. It's about empowering others, about building a team that can function without needing constant oversight. I believe in you all, and I'm here to support you, but you're capable of more than you think." There was a collective sigh of relief in the room, but the conversation wasn't over. The decision to trust his team would be an ongoing challenge, not just for Elon but for everyone involved. His team needed time to adjust to this new dynamic, and he needed to be patient as they navigated this transition together. The next few weeks were filled with small, but significant, moments of rebuilding. Elon spent more time at home with his children, and Grimes continued to encourage him to stay true to his commitment to finding balance. They took family trips, hiked in the mountains, and spent time reflecting on the future, not just as a family, but as a team. And slowly but surely, Elon noticed something unexpected happening at work. Tesla's engineers and designers began to take more initiative. They came up with ideas that surprised even him, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. They were no longer waiting for Elon to dictate every move, Instead, they were making bold decisions, testing new ideas, and collaborating in ways they hadn't before. One afternoon, Elon received a call from his lead engineer, Lucas, who was overseeing the production of a new model. "Elon, I think you should take a look at this," Lucas said, excitement in his voice. "We've made a breakthrough in the battery design. It's going to change the game." Elon's heart raced as he listened to the details. It was a significant advancement, one that could potentially revolutionize the electric vehicle market. But what struck him most wasn't the discovery itself. It was the fact that Lucas had taken the initiative to explore new possibilities on his own without waiting for Elon's approval. It was a moment of realization that the culture of innovation at Tesla was still alive and thriving, even without his constant presence. "That's amazing, Lucas," Elon said, a smile creeping onto his face. "I'm so proud of you and the team. Keep pushing. This is exactly what we need." It was in that moment that Elon realized the true power of leadership. It wasn't about being the person with all the answers. It wasn't about micromanaging every detail or carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. True leadership was about creating an environment where others could thrive, where trust and autonomy allowed for new ideas to flourish. Meanwhile, at home, A-Xii continued to amaze him with his insights. One afternoon, as they sat together at the kitchen table, A-Xii turned to Elon with another one of his seemingly simple but profound questions. "Dad," A-Xii said, his eyes wide with curiosity, "why do people fight so much?" Elon looked at his son, caught off guard by the question. "Well, sometimes people fight because they're afraid," he began, choosing his words carefully. "They're afraid of losing something important to them, so they end up fighting to protect it." A-Xii nodded thoughtfully. "But what if they just talk instead of fight? Wouldn't that work better?" Elon smiled at his son's wisdom, feeling a deep sense of pride. "You know, A-Xii, I think you're absolutely right. Talking and understanding each other is always better than fighting." It was moments like these that reminded Elon of the importance of communication, trust, and love. As he continued to rebuild the relationships in his life, both personal and professional, he realized that true healing came not from perfection, but from embracing vulnerability, learning to trust others, and allowing space for growth. In the months that followed, Elon's life began to reflect the balance he had longed for. His companies flourished with a renewed sense of creativity and innovation, while his family life became richer, deeper, and more meaningful. The journey was far from easy, but with every step forward, Elon felt more at peace with himself and the world around him. The feeling of peace that had settled over Elon's life was something he hadn't experienced in years. The balance between work and family was no longer a distant dream but a reality he was actively cultivating. Still, even amidst this newfound sense of calm, there were moments when the world seemed to remind him of the constant challenges that lay ahead. Elon knew that true change, both within himself and his businesses, would take time. While the Tesla team had made impressive strides in his absence, there was a nagging feeling that they were still treading water in certain areas. It wasn't that the company was faltering, it was thriving, in fact, but Elon wanted more. He had always pushed the boundaries of what was possible, always sought to go further, faster, higher. And as the days wore on, Elon started to see something in himself that was both exciting and unnerving, a new sense of urgency. The time he had spent focusing on his family had opened his eyes to a critical realization: the future of humanity, the very reason he had dedicated his life to space exploration, clean energy, and sustainable innovation, required bolder, faster action. The clock was ticking, and there was still so much to do. One morning, after a restless night spent deep in thought, Elon called a meeting with his executive team. Grimes, too, was becoming more involved in his work, often offering creative insights that made him think beyond the conventional. The conference room at Tesla was full, the air thick with anticipation. Elon's team had learned to expect the unexpected with him, and they could sense that today was going to be another one of those days. "I've been thinking a lot," Elon began, pacing in front of the group. "We've accomplished incredible things so far, but we're not moving fast enough. The world is changing quickly, and we need to accelerate. We need to rethink everything, our approach, our vision, and our technology. There was a shift in the room, a collective awareness that this wasn't just another routine meeting. This was the start of something bigger. "You want to go faster?" asked Maria, his lead engineer. She didn't sound skeptical, just cautious. "I do," Elon responded, his voice steady but intense. "I want us to push even harder. At SpaceX, we're making great strides with interplanetary travel, but we're still not where we need to be. At Tesla, we have the ability to change the world with electric vehicles, but we're up against some fierce competition. We need to innovate faster, expand further, and make sure that we're not just building products, we're building the future." The room was quiet, with everyone contemplating Elon's words. They had all heard this kind of talk before, but this time there was something different in his tone. It wasn't just about growth, it was about a sense of urgency, a need to get ahead of the curve, to ensure that the innovations they were working on would actually define the next era of humanity's progress. Elon could see the wheels turning in their minds. This wasn't about maintaining momentum anymore, it was about completely reimagining the trajectory of Tesla, SpaceX, and all his ventures. There was no room for slowing down. "We need to think bigger," Elon continued, turning toward his team. "I've been holding back, but we can't afford to wait any longer. The world is at a tipping point. We're building the infrastructure of tomorrow, and I believe we can create something that will revolutionize not just one industry but multiple." The team, while shocked by the urgency in his words, understood that this was the nature of Elon Musk, never satisfied, always pushing the limits of what was possible. But now, they sensed that he wasn't just talking about business, he was talking about legacy. "This is going to be a challenge, but we're capable of it," Elon said, his voice becoming more intense. "We're going to break the barriers that are holding us back. I want to double our efforts on electric battery tech. We're going to need breakthrough energy storage solutions. At SpaceX, we're not just going to Mars, we're going to focus on making space travel routine. We're going to disrupt not just one, but multiple industries. We're going to move the human race forward." The room buzzed with excitement. The energy in the room was palpable, and for the first time in a long while, Elon felt the fire of his ambition stoking something deep within him. His personal growth had made him realize that this kind of challenge, one that focused on humanity's progress, not just profit, was the true work that mattered. Later that night, after the meeting, Elon stood in his office alone, gazing out the window at the stars in the distance. He thought about the future, about how, in his pursuit of perfection, he had often forgotten that the true goal was not to build something flawless, but to build something that mattered. He thought about his children and how he wanted to leave them a world that was better, brighter, and more connected than the one he had inherited. He thought about how, even with all the progress, there was still so much more to do. And then, as he looked up at the stars, a realization hit him like a bolt of lightning: it wasn't just about the technology. It wasn't just about the electric cars or the rockets. It was about something even more fundamental. "We're going to need to rethink how we live on this planet," Elon whispered to himself. "We're not just building the future of technology, we're building the future of humanity." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as Elon began outlining a new vision for the future. He called together his top engineers, his best minds, and Grimes, who was already offering her unique perspective on how they could integrate creativity with sustainability. The plan was ambitious, but Elon was ready to go all in. Tesla and SpaceX would need to collaborate more closely than ever before. The goal was to create an ecosystem, a new way of life, that merged sustainable energy, electric transportation, and space travel in a way that would change the world forever. At the heart of this vision was one simple but profound idea: humanity could not continue to push forward without addressing the most pressing issues facing the planet. Whether it was climate change, resource depletion, or the need for sustainable energy, these challenges would require radical, innovative solutions. But as much as Elon pushed forward with his plans, there were still the quiet moments, the ones when he would sit with Grimes, or play with his children, and realize that all of this, the work, the empire, the drive for progress, meant nothing without the love and connection that grounded him. It was this balance, this harmony between vision and family, that kept him centered. He wasn't just working for a better world. He was building one for his children, for all of humanity, and for future generations to come. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk had always prided himself on his ability to think big, to push the boundaries of possibility. But lately, as he watched his companies grow and his personal life evolve, he began to realize that innovation wasn't just about technology, it was about people. For so long, Elon had viewed himself as a lone visionary, a maverick whose ideas could change the world if only he could bring them to life. But as he spent more time with his family, particularly A-Xii, and as he grew closer to Grimes, a realization settled over him: the key to creating real, lasting change lay not just in the brilliance of ideas, but in the strength of relationships, both personal and professional. It was something he had overlooked in the past: the power of connection. As his team at Tesla and SpaceX had evolved over the years, Elon had noticed the subtle but significant shift in how they worked together. The tension that once characterized their brainstorming sessions had softened into a collaborative energy. Ideas were no longer coming solely from him. His team members were empowered, stepping up to take charge of projects, and working together as a cohesive unit. Elon, too, had begun to understand the importance of stepping back and allowing others to lead, not just for the good of the company, but for his own well-being. However, this newfound sense of trust and collaboration would be put to the test sooner than he expected. One chilly morning, a crisis hit Tesla. A software glitch had caused a significant delay in production, and the team had been struggling to identify the root cause. The pressure was mounting. Tesla's reputation, already under intense scrutiny, was on the line. There was no room for error, and Elon knew that the company couldn't afford to falter. He called for an emergency meeting. In the large conference room at Tesla's headquarters, his team gathered. The atmosphere was tense, with everyone murmuring anxiously. Elon stood at the front, his eyes scanning the room, taking in the worried faces of his engineers and leaders. "I know this is a huge challenge," Elon began, his tone firm but not unkind. "We've been here before, and we've always come out stronger. We'll figure this out, but it's going to require all of us working together. No egos. No shortcuts. Just raw collaboration." He took a deep breath. "Maria, I need you and the software team to dig deep. I want a detailed report on what happened, and I want it in 2 hours. Let's find the solution, not just the cause. Lucas, check in with the production team, make sure they're aligned and ready for when we have a fix. Everyone else, get to work. Let's make this happen." As the team dispersed to tackle their respective tasks, Elon stayed behind, looking out the window, deep in thought. The pressure of the moment was undeniably intense, but for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel the urge to take full control. He had built a strong team, one that he trusted to handle the crisis. They were more than just employees, they were collaborators, partners in a mission that went far beyond just building cars. Minutes later, Maria returned to the room with a solution. The software glitch was traced to an unexpected flaw in the coding that had affected a small batch of batteries. The problem was fixable, but it would take a few more days to get the production line back to full speed. Elon nodded, visibly relieved. "Thank you, Maria. Great work. I know this wasn't easy, but this is what we do. We solve problems." As the meeting wrapped up, Elon's thoughts drifted back to the way he had handled the situation. He hadn't been the one to solve the problem, but he had been the one to create an environment where his team could flourish. He had empowered them to take control, to act as leaders, and in doing so, they had not only found the solution but strengthened the bonds that held them together as a company. That evening, after the crisis had been averted, Elon spent some quiet time with A-Xii. The boy had been particularly chatty that day, and as they sat together in the living room, A-Xii turned to his father with yet another insightful question. "Dad, what's the most important thing in the world?" Elon smiled, his heart swelling with pride. That's a big question, buddy. I think the most important thing is love, being kind, helping each other, and supporting one another. X thought about that for a moment, his brow furrowed in concentration. What if people don't love each other, though? What if they fight? Elon paused, the weight of the question settling in. It was a question he had asked himself many times throughout his life, especially as he looked back on the relationships that had shaped him. Well, Elon said slowly, sometimes people fight because they're afraid. They're afraid of losing something important, or of not being understood. But love, that's the thing that can help us all understand each other better. X nodded as though he understood, then smiled. I think love is the most important thing too. You're right, Dad. Elon smiled back, feeling a deep sense of peace. In that moment, he understood that his son's wisdom wasn't just childlike innocence. It was a profound truth, one that could be applied not only to family but to every aspect of life. It was love, trust, and connection that created the foundation for everything he had built and would continue to build. The next day, Elon made a decision that would change the course of his career. As the companies he built continued to thrive, he knew it was time to focus on something that he had neglected for too long: human connection, not just with his family, but within his organizations and with the wider world. While space exploration and electric vehicles remained central to his mission, Elon realized that there was something even more critical to his vision for the future: a society that worked together in harmony, where people supported one another and where love wasn't just a personal value, but a collective one. Elon began to draft plans for a new initiative, a global project that would focus on connecting people through innovative technologies, fostering collaboration and understanding across borders, industries, and communities. He called it the Humanity Network. It was ambitious, of course. But if there was one thing Elon had learned over the years, it was that great ideas didn't just come from the mind, they came from the heart, too. And in that moment, as he sat at his desk, his mind racing with possibilities, Elon Musk understood something that would shape the rest of his journey. It wasn't just about creating the future, it was about creating a future for everyone. The concept of the Humanity Network had been stirring in Elon Musk's mind for weeks. The idea wasn't just to create another tech project, it was a shift in perspective. It wasn't about creating a new product for consumption, but rather a new way of fostering global collaboration, using technology to bridge divides and build a more connected, sustainable future. It was a big idea, one that would require resources, partnerships, and a long-term commitment. But Elon was no stranger to challenges. He was used to walking the tightrope of the unknown, the thrill of pursuing something that seemed impossible. The idea of a global network that united people across different continents, industries, and backgrounds was bold, but in Elon's mind, it was exactly the kind of transformative initiative the world needed. He sat down with Grimes one evening, sharing his vision. You know, Elon began, it's not enough just to create electric cars or rockets to Mars. We need to think bigger, think about how we connect people, how we use technology to bring people together rather than dividing them further. Grimes, who had become more involved in Elon's work over time, nodded thoughtfully. You've always had that belief, right? That humanity can do better. And I get it, the things you're creating are all stepping stones towards something much larger. Elon smiled at her, appreciating her insight. Exactly. Imagine a platform that connects people from every corner of the earth: artists, engineers, scientists, educators, anyone with a passion or an idea. It's not just about tech, it's about creating a space where the brightest minds can collaborate and come together to solve the world's biggest challenges. Grimes thought for a moment. But you don't mean a social network in the way we know them, right? This would be something deeper. More like a movement. Yes, Elon said with a spark of excitement in his eyes. Not just a network. A movement. We'll use the platform to solve real-world problems: climate change, inequality, resource shortages, and it won't just be about donations or charity. It will be about creating solutions that everyone can be a part of. Grimes smiled, clearly impressed by the scope of the vision. "I think you're onto something huge. But this will need a global approach. It's not just tech companies you need, but every sector." Elon's mind was already racing with possibilities. He began to think about the partnerships they would need to forge, the resources they would have to secure, and how they would convince the world that this network, this movement, was worth investing in. The next day, Elon convened a meeting with some of his closest advisors and key members from Tesla and SpaceX. They gathered around a long conference table, the energy in the room palpable. It was rare for Elon to initiate a conversation so focused on something beyond the realm of his companies, but today, he was determined to share his vision. "Here's the plan," Elon began, standing at the head of the table. "We are going to create a global platform, a humanity network. This network will leverage technology, not just for business, but to solve global problems. We're going to connect people from all walks of life, engineers, creatives, doctors, farmers, anyone who has the potential to make a difference." There was a slight murmur around the room as his team digested the enormity of what he was proposing. Elon continued, "It won't be easy. It's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of work, but the future of humanity depends on us coming together in ways that we haven't before. We're going to need everyone on board, including other tech companies, government partners, and global organizations. This can't be just another startup or social media platform. It has to be something that transcends industries, that makes collaboration on a global scale not only possible but essential." The discussion quickly evolved into a brainstorming session, with various team members offering suggestions on how to make the Humanity Network a reality. There were concerns about privacy, security, and how to make the platform truly open and accessible to everyone. But Elon's vision was unwavering. "We'll need to use everything we've learned at Tesla and SpaceX to ensure that the platform is scalable, secure, and capable of handling the massive influx of global collaboration," he said. "And it has to be sustainable, not just environmentally, but economically and socially. We want this to be a movement, not a business." As the meeting concluded, Elon felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Humanity Network was no longer just an abstract idea. It was becoming a concrete initiative, one that could have a far-reaching impact on the world. But Elon knew that the hard part was just beginning. Building the platform, gaining trust, and convincing others to join him in this vision would be monumental tasks. Later that evening, after a long day of meetings and discussions, Elon sat down with X, who was busy playing with his toys. X looked up at his father and smiled, his face lighting up with excitement. "Dad," he said, "I think I want to be part of the Humanity Network too." Elon paused, surprised by the comment. "Oh. What do you mean?" "Well," X began, his brow furrowing in that serious way only a child could, "I think if we all work together, we can fix the world. People need to listen to each other more." Elon's heart swelled as he listened to his son's words. The simple truth of it hit him in that moment. The Humanity Network wasn't just about connecting the world through technology, it was about connecting people through understanding. It was about listening, learning, and growing together. X's words echoed in Elon's mind as he walked out of the room later that evening. It was a profound reminder of why he was doing all of this in the first place, to leave a better world for his children, for X, for all of humanity. As weeks passed, Elon and his team at Tesla and SpaceX worked tirelessly to begin laying the groundwork for the Humanity Network. They started by reaching out to other organizations, businesses, and leaders in various fields. Elon made calls to top executives from tech companies, to political leaders, and to nonprofit organizations. His goal was clear: this network needed to be as broad and inclusive as possible. The first step was gathering a diverse group of people who could help shape the network. They needed not just engineers, but sociologists, educators, and global experts who understood the challenges facing different parts of the world. It became clear to Elon that this project wouldn't just be a technological solution, it would require a cultural shift as well. A month into the initiative, Elon received an invitation to speak at the United Nations. They wanted him to present his vision for the Humanity Network as a way of addressing some of the world's most pressing issues. It was an unexpected opportunity, but one that could help him gain global support. The night before his speech, Elon sat quietly in his office, reflecting on how far he had come. The boy who once dreamed of reaching Mars, of transforming the electric car industry, was now standing on the precipice of something even bigger. This wasn't just about his legacy, it was about the legacy of humanity. As he sat there, his thoughts once again turned to A-Xii, and to the wisdom he had shared earlier. Maybe, just maybe, his son had the answer all along. The key to building the future was about people coming together. Technology, no matter how advanced, would only be as effective as the human connections it facilitated. The next morning, as Elon Musk stood in front of a sea of global leaders at the United Nations, his mind was focused, yet still a whirlwind of thoughts. The enormity of what he was about to present felt more real than ever. He had spoken to crowds of engineers, innovators, and entrepreneurs before, but this was different. Today, he was speaking to ambassadors, policymakers, and leaders who represented millions of lives, with the world's future resting on the decisions made in this very room. His vision for the Humanity Network had grown beyond just a lofty idea, it had become a tangible possibility. Yet, how could he convince them to see it? How could he, a technologist, a visionary, make them understand that what he was proposing wasn't just another tech initiative? It was a movement that had the potential to change everything. The morning light streamed through the tall windows of the United Nations Assembly Hall as Elon approached the podium. A hush fell over the room. Cameras clicked and buzzed, but for a moment, everything seemed to stand still. Elon adjusted the microphone, took a deep breath, and looked out at the faces before him. The weight of the world seemed to bear down on his shoulders, but he was determined to make this work. His mission was clear. He wasn't just advocating for technological advancement, he was advocating for global unity, cooperation, and the future of humanity. Honorable delegates, he began, his voice calm but resolute, we stand at a crossroads. Our world faces challenges that are more complex and interconnected than ever before. From climate change to inequality, from political unrest to global health crises, the problems we face cannot be solved in isolation. He paused, scanning the room to gauge the reaction, then continued. We need a new approach, one that transcends borders, industries, and ideologies. We need to build a network that connects people, not just by technology, but by purpose. A humanity network where every person, every leader, every innovator, every child, can contribute to solving the world's most urgent issues. There was a murmur in the room. Some were skeptical, others intrigued. Elon could feel the room's tension but pushed forward. This network will not be just another platform for digital interaction. It will be a global collaboration space where people, organizations, governments, and individuals can come together to tackle the greatest challenges of our time. Think of it as a bridge that connects minds, hearts, and hands to create solutions that the world desperately needs. Elon paused for effect, his gaze now steady and unwavering. He knew this was the pivotal moment, the point where his words needed to resonate deeply with those in power. This is about more than just solving problems, it's about creating a shared vision for the future, one where humanity works together as one. This network will empower the creators, the thinkers, the doers, not just in Silicon Valley or New York, but in the rural villages of Africa, the islands of the Pacific, and the bustling cities of Asia. This will be the foundation for a new kind of global cooperation. He walked slowly across the stage, letting the magnitude of his words settle in. This is not a utopian dream. It is a practical, achievable reality. By using the technologies we already have at our disposal, artificial intelligence, blockchain, renewable energy, we can create the tools that allow this collaboration to thrive. But we need the support of governments, the engagement of companies, and the willingness of individuals to embrace this vision. Elon's voice softened as he concluded, the future will not wait for us. The question is, will we wait for it to overwhelm us, or will we act now, and create a world where everyone has the opportunity to contribute, to innovate, and to make a difference. There was a pause. For a moment, everything felt suspended in time. Then, a ripple of applause broke through the silence. Some in the audience stood, others clapped with hesitant but genuine interest. Elon took a moment to collect his thoughts, trying not to let the adrenaline rush overwhelm him. The next few minutes were a blur of questions from delegates, each probing the specifics of the Humanity Network. Elon addressed each query with calm precision, explaining how the platform would be structured, how it would be decentralized to ensure that it wasn't controlled by any single entity, and how the platform would use open-source technology to ensure accessibility and transparency. He reassured them that privacy and security would be central components of the network's design. As the speech ended and the applause began to die down, Elon felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. This was only the beginning, but it was a promising one. He had done what he set out to do. He had planted the seed of the Humanity Network in the minds of the most influential decision-makers in the world. As he walked off the stage, his assistant approached with a brief message. "Mr. Musk, the press is waiting. They want an interview." Elon sighed. The work wasn't over yet, but there was something about this moment that felt different. The world, for the first time in a long while, was starting to listen, not just to his innovations, but to his ideas for the future. A future that wasn't driven by profits, but by the collective will of humanity. Back in his hotel room, Elon took a moment to reflect on the speech. He was alone, but for the first time in a while, he felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't about pushing the boundaries of space or technology, it was about connecting the dots that truly mattered. It was about humanity, in the truest sense of the word. As he prepared to leave for dinner, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from A-Xii. The message read, "How did your speech go, Dad? I think the network will work, but only if people really care about each other." Elon smiled. His son's simple wisdom was always there to remind him of what mattered most. In that moment, he realized A-Xii wasn't just the future, he was the present, the constant reminder that the most important things in life were love, connection, and collaboration. The Humanity Network would take time, patience, and effort to build, but Elon was more committed than ever. With the momentum from the UN speech, he knew he had to push forward, because the future wasn't something that would wait. The future was now, and it needed all of them. In the weeks that followed Elon Musk's speech at the United Nations, the Humanity Network began to take shape. What started as an idea, a dream even, had now become a movement that was starting to gain traction across the globe. The speech had ignited a spark, a conversation that went far beyond the walls of the United Nations. Media outlets around the world picked up the story, some skeptical, others intrigued by the boldness of Musk's vision. Headlines blared across social media platforms, calling the Humanity Network the next evolution of global cooperation, or the future of human connection. It wasn't just tech blogs and innovation forums buzzing about it, even mainstream media had begun covering Musk's bold idea. Everyone seemed to be talking about it. For Elon, the increased media attention was both exhilarating and overwhelming. He had always been used to the spotlight, but this was different. This time, it wasn't just about launching rockets or electric cars. This was about something deeper, a call for global unity, a shared purpose that resonated with millions of people around the world. And while it was gaining traction, it was also drawing its fair share of critics. Skeptics were quick to ask, how could one man create a global network for collaboration? What makes this network different from what already exists? The answers weren't simple, and Elon knew that. He had no intention of backing down, though. The time for action had arrived. With the support of global leaders and innovators, the groundwork for the Humanity Network began to take shape. One of the first steps was assembling a team, an ambitious, diverse, and passionate group of individuals who could see beyond the obstacles and towards the possibilities. Elon was determined to ensure that the Humanity Network wasn't just about the elite of Silicon Valley. It needed to be inclusive, a platform where anyone, anywhere, could come together to make a difference. He called a series of meetings with global leaders, not just from tech companies, but from all sectors: healthcare, education, agriculture, and the arts. He knew that to truly address the world's greatest challenges, the network needed to draw on the expertise of people from every corner of society. The Humanity Network would be built with a focus on three core pillars: collaboration, sustainability, and transparency. Months later, Elon was at his home in California, hosting a roundtable discussion with some of the first pioneers to join the project. A few of his closest allies were gathered around a sleek table in a modern conference room, overlooking a sprawling view of the Pacific Ocean. Among them were scientists, educators, environmental activists, and leaders from across the globe. Each person brought something invaluable to the table. Elon felt a sense of unity as the conversation flowed. They were no longer just individuals from disparate fields, they were united by a shared vision. One of the participants, Dr. Maria Lopez, a renowned climate scientist from Brazil, was the first to speak. Elon, the Humanity Network could be the key to solving climate change. By connecting research, innovation, and policymakers in real time, we could create a unified approach to tackling global warming. But it's not just about collaboration, it's about real, actionable change. We need resources, we need action, not just ideas. Elon nodded. Exactly. That's why transparency is so important in this network. It can't just be a place for conversations. It needs to drive accountability. I want people to see the tangible outcomes of their contributions, whether it's through funding clean energy projects or helping communities access vital resources. A young entrepreneur from Kenya, A-Xii, spoke next. And we need to be mindful of local needs as well. What works in the US or Europe might not work in rural parts of Africa or Asia. The Humanity Network should empower local communities to address their own issues. It can't be just a top-down solution, it has to be decentralized, so everyone can contribute. Elon leaned forward, his mind racing with possibilities. Absolutely. That's the beauty of this network. It will give people the tools they need to drive change in their own communities. And at the same time, we'll have a global view of what's working and what's not, which will allow us to adapt and scale solutions. The conversation continued late into the night, ideas flowing freely and passionately. Elon felt the energy in the room, the sense of excitement that came with knowing they were on the cusp of something world-changing. But even as the momentum grew, he knew that building a global network was no small feat. There would be challenges, political, financial, logistical, that would require patience, persistence, and, above all, a shared belief in the vision. A few weeks later, the team unveiled the first prototype of the Humanity Network, an online platform designed to facilitate collaboration and problem-solving on a global scale. It wasn't flashy or overly complex. It was clean, simple, and user-friendly, designed to connect people from all walks of life. The goal was to make it accessible to anyone, anywhere, no matter their background or resources. The initial launch was met with a wave of interest, as thousands of people from around the world signed up. They came from all sectors: engineers, scientists, artists, educators, environmentalists, and even students, each eager to contribute in their own way. The platform allowed users to post projects, share ideas, and connect with others working on similar problems. It became an online space for collaboration, where the best minds in the world could work together to tackle issues like poverty, climate change, education inequality, and healthcare accessibility. But as expected, the platform also faced resistance. Some were concerned about privacy issues. Others questioned whether this was just another tech utopia that would never live up to its promise. Elon had anticipated this skepticism, and he welcomed the scrutiny. After all, if people weren't questioning it, it wouldn't be worth doing. To address the concerns, Elon held a live broadcast, where he answered tough questions from journalists, critics, and concerned citizens. He was straightforward, explaining the platform's decentralized structure, its commitment to privacy, and its focus on transparency. "This is not about control," he said in the broadcast. This is about empowering people to work together to create the world they want to see. We're not going to solve all the world's problems overnight, but every small step counts. And every person's voice matters. Elon's candidness helped ease some of the doubts, but he knew the real work was just beginning. The Humanity Network was only a seed, and it would take time to grow. He believed, however, that once people saw the potential of what they could accomplish together, the network would become an unstoppable force. Back at home, Elon received another message from X. This time, it read, "Dad, I saw people from all over the world talking about your network. That's cool. But will it really help everyone? What if it's too hard for some people to use?" Elon chuckled. His son's innocence and honesty had a way of cutting through the noise. "You're right, X," Elon typed back. "It's going to be a challenge. But we're doing everything we can to make sure it's accessible to everyone, no matter where they are. And remember, real change takes time." X's response came quickly, "I know, Dad. Just keep going. It's going to be awesome." Elon smiled, feeling a wave of pride wash over him. His son, with his simple but profound understanding of the world, had reminded him once again of what this was all about, not just creating technology, but creating a better world for everyone, especially for future generations. As the Humanity Network continued to grow, Elon Musk found himself faced with a new challenge, turning the idea of global cooperation into real-world action. The platform was working, but now it needed its first true test, a project that could demonstrate the network's potential and show the world that this was more than just a collection of ideas. Elon knew that the network could only succeed if it proved it could address tangible, pressing issues. It wasn't enough to merely talk about solving problems, it was time to act. But what issues should they tackle first? The world had no shortage of crises, from climate change to poverty, from hunger to education. One evening, while reviewing the recent activity on the platform, Elon came across a project proposal that caught his attention. A group of volunteers from various countries had come together to address the water crisis in sub-Saharan Africa. They had identified several rural communities where access to clean, safe drinking water was either limited or non-existent. The group's proposal was straightforward: design and implement sustainable, low-cost water filtration systems that could be deployed in these areas. Elon immediately saw the potential for this project to be the first test of the Humanity Network's ability to deliver results. It wasn't just a technological solution, it was a humanitarian mission that required collaboration across disciplines. Engineers, scientists, environmentalists, and community leaders would need to work together, pooling their resources and expertise to make this project a success. He reached out to the group's leaders and scheduled a video call. As the call began, Elon was introduced to a diverse team: Dr. Amina Hassan, a water resource engineer from Kenya, Javier Ortega, a renewable energy specialist from Spain, and Maya Patel, a local community leader from Uganda. Each of them brought a unique perspective to the table, and it was clear that they were passionate about the project. "Elon, we're excited about what the Humanity Network could offer," Amina said, her voice filled with determination. "The need for clean water in these communities is dire. But we've already started working on a prototype for a solar-powered water filtration system that we think could make a huge difference. What we need now is funding, support, and the ability to scale quickly." Elon nodded thoughtfully. "I've seen some incredible solutions to water scarcity, but the challenge is always scaling them to reach the people who need them most. If we can make this work in sub-Saharan Africa, it could set a precedent for tackling water issues in other parts of the world. But we can't do it alone." Maya, who had been quiet up until this point, spoke up. "We've already spoken to local governments and communities, and they're eager to be part of the solution. The question is, how do we ensure that we can build something that's not only sustainable but also affordable?" Elon's mind was racing, as he began to formulate a plan. He knew that the Humanity Network could provide the platform for collaboration, but the project needed more than just people, it needed resources, both financial and logistical. "Here's what we can do," he said, his voice filled with conviction. Let's launch a global crowdfunding campaign through the Humanity Network to raise the necessary funds. We'll also connect you with other experts in the field who can help you refine the prototype and find ways to scale it. At the same time, we'll work on securing partnerships with major organizations that can assist with logistics and distribution. The team was immediately on board. Over the next few weeks, they launched the crowdfunding campaign, and the response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from all over the world, as individuals, corporations, and organizations rallied behind the cause. The Humanity Network's ability to connect people with a shared purpose had proven itself, as the project quickly gained momentum. As the funds were raised, the team began working on the next phase of the project, refining the filtration system and preparing for the first deployment in a small village in Uganda. With support from the network, they were able to collaborate with local engineers, environmentalists, and government officials to ensure that the solution would meet the specific needs of the community. The first successful deployment took place 6 months after the initial idea was proposed. The solar-powered filtration system, which could provide clean water for hundreds of people, was installed in a small village near the shores of Lake Victoria. The team had worked tirelessly to ensure that the system was affordable, sustainable, and capable of operating in the harsh conditions of the region. When the day of the launch arrived, Elon watched from his office as the first drop of clean water flowed from the filtration system. He could feel the weight of the moment, the realization that this was more than just a project. It was proof that the Humanity Network had the potential to make a real difference in the world. The success of the water filtration project quickly spread across the globe. Media outlets reported on the achievement, and the story became a symbol of what could be accomplished when people from different walks of life came together with a common purpose. But more importantly, the success of the project helped solidify the Humanity Network as a legitimate force for positive change. One evening, as Elon sat at his desk reviewing the latest updates, he received a message from X. It read, "Dad, I heard about the water thing. That's really cool. How did it feel when the water started flowing?" Elon smiled as he typed his response. "It felt incredible, X. It was one of those moments when you realize that all the work, all the planning, all the struggles, were worth it. We made a real difference. And we're just getting started." X replied almost immediately, "That's awesome. I think you're really doing it. But, hey, what's next?" Elon paused for a moment. The journey had just begun. The Humanity Network had proven that collaboration could work, that technology could create positive change, but there was so much more to do. Climate change, healthcare, education, the challenges were endless, but so were the possibilities. Next. Elon typed, a determined smile spreading across his face. Next, we change the world. And we do it together. The success of the Humanity Network's first major project, the solar-powered water filtration system in Uganda, was undeniable. News outlets worldwide hailed it as a monumental achievement in humanitarian innovation. The Humanity Network was quickly becoming a household name, symbolizing the potential for global collaboration and unity. Yet, as with any revolutionary initiative, it was not without its detractors. While the world marveled at the progress, a growing number of influential figures began to voice concerns. These weren't just the usual critics, these were individuals and organizations with significant power in business, politics, and international policy. The pushback came swiftly, and it was clear that the Humanity Network was stirring up more than just admiration. A few days after the announcement of the successful water project, Elon received a phone call from a longtime acquaintance, Robert Langston, a prominent corporate CEO in the tech industry. Langston had always been a fierce advocate for free market capitalism, and while he had privately admired some of Musk's ventures, he had never fully agreed with his vision of collective action. "Hey, Elon," Langston's voice crackled through the speaker. "I saw what you did with the Humanity Network, and I have to say, it's impressive. But let's be real for a second. The world doesn't work like that. You can't just expect people to come together in this way and start solving problems. The logistics alone are a nightmare, and the whole thing reeks of centralized control. What you're trying to do, it's too big to succeed. Elon sat back in his chair, listening intently. He knew Langston well. He was no stranger to dissent, but hearing it from someone like him stung. What exactly are you concerned about? Elon asked, his tone calm but firm. It's not about what you did, Elon. The water filtration project is fine, hell, it's even noble. But what you're building with this network, it's not scalable. It's too idealistic. You can't get everyone to think the same way. Different countries, different ideologies, it's a mess waiting to happen. Plus, there's the privacy issue. I mean, who controls the data in all of this? What happens if the wrong people get their hands on it? Elon paused, reflecting on his response. He had anticipated this line of questioning. There were always people who feared change, particularly those who had a stake in the status quo. He also knew that many would misunderstand his intentions. Robert, the point of the Humanity Network is not about control, it's about empowerment, Elon replied. We're building a platform that's open, decentralized, and transparent. The data will be accessible to anyone who wants to use it, and we're taking extreme precautions to protect privacy. This isn't about imposing an ideology, it's about providing people with the tools to solve problems themselves. And as for scalability, it's already happening. Langston was silent for a moment. I get your vision, Elon. I do. But you can't change human nature. People aren't going to drop everything and start working on these big problems unless there's something in it for them. You're talking about a global revolution, but revolution has consequences. It's a hell of a gamble. Elon knew Langston's words were grounded in a deep cynicism about human nature. But Musk's belief in humanity's potential had always been stronger than any doubt or fear. He wasn't going to back down. We're already seeing it happen, Robert, Elon said, his voice steady. People are coming together. They're solving problems that the world's governments and corporations couldn't even touch. And as for consequences, the consequences of inaction are much worse. The call ended shortly after, and Elon was left with a lingering feeling of frustration. He had heard these concerns before, but now they were coming from all sides, from corporate giants, powerful politicians, and even respected thought leaders. They all shared the same belief, that the Humanity Network's idealistic vision was doomed to fail. But Musk refused to be deterred. Meanwhile, the media landscape was beginning to show cracks in the optimistic narrative. Reports started to surface questioning the effectiveness of the Humanity Network. Is the Humanity Network really a sustainable model for global change? One article asked. Can one platform truly address the world's most pressing issues? Some critics argued that the network's decentralized nature was too chaotic, that it was giving a platform to people who weren't necessarily qualified to solve complex global issues. Others pointed out the glaring lack of oversight, suggesting that the platform could become a breeding ground for misinformation or exploitation. But perhaps the most vocal criticism came from an unexpected source, a coalition of governments from the world's leading industrialized nations. In a public statement issued through the United Nations, they expressed concerns about the rise of a global network that could undermine international law and order. We respect the efforts of the Humanity Network, but its sheer scope and lack of regulation pose a serious threat to national sovereignty and security, the statement read. While the intention may be noble, the execution of such a platform could easily lead to instability. We cannot allow this unchecked power to grow. Elon took these criticisms seriously. He knew that the fear of the unknown often led to resistance, especially when it came from those in power. But he also saw this as an opportunity to prove the Humanity Network's potential to unify, not divide. One evening, as Elon prepared for a critical address to the United Nations, he received another message from X. This time, it read, "Dad, why are people saying bad things about your idea? Don't they know you're just trying to help?" Elon paused, his heart tightening. He had always tried to protect his children from the weight of his public life, but the reality was inescapable. X, who was only 6, was beginning to see the complexities of the world around him. "They're just scared, buddy," Elon typed back. "Some people are afraid of change, and they don't always understand what we're trying to do. But we'll keep pushing forward, because the world needs it. We'll show them why this is important." X's reply was simple and pure: "I know you will, Dad. Keep going." Elon smiled, feeling a surge of determination. His son's unwavering faith in him reminded him of why he had started this journey in the first place. For moments like these. For the future. For the world. As Elon prepared for his speech, he knew that the coming months would be crucial. The world was watching, waiting to see if the Humanity Network could withstand the growing pushback. But Elon was resolute. He wasn't just building a network. He was building a legacy. And no amount of resistance would stop him from continuing. The pushback was relentless. Every move Elon made to further the Humanity Network seemed to be met with new obstacles. Governments, corporations, and even influential voices in the media seemed to be doing everything they could to stifle the growth of this global platform. The criticism was more than just a few harsh words, it was a full-blown campaign to discredit Musk's vision. At first, Elon tried to brush it off. He had always been a visionary, accustomed to skepticism and resistance. But the deeper the resistance grew, the more he realized that the Humanity Network's success didn't just depend on innovative ideas or cutting-edge technology, it required shifting public perception and winning over hearts and minds on a global scale. Without the trust of the people, even the best idea would falter. As he sat in his office late one night, reviewing data from the platform, a message came through from Maya Patel, the Ugandan community leader who had worked alongside him on the water filtration project. Her message was simple. "Elon, we've seen the incredible impact this network has had here. People are coming together in ways we never imagined. But now it's time to take this to the next level." Her words echoed in his mind. Take this to the next level. He knew exactly what she meant. They had proven that collaboration could work on a small scale, but now it was time for the Humanity Network to prove it could tackle larger, more complex issues. The next day, Elon called a meeting with his team. He was determined to use the network's growing momentum to turn the tide. The resistance wasn't just about technology or politics, it was about fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of change, and fear of losing control. The way forward, Elon realized, was not to confront these forces directly, but to show them how the Humanity Network could create solutions in a way that benefited everyone, regardless of their background, nationality, or ideology. "We've got to focus on the positive impact this network can have," Elon said to the group gathered around the table. "We need to show the world that this is about bringing people together, not dividing them. We need a project that demonstrates how collaboration can transcend borders and ideologies." Javier Ortega, the Spanish renewable energy specialist, was the first to speak up. "We've seen how this platform has helped us make a difference on a local scale. But we need something bigger, something that addresses a global problem." Elon's mind raced. A global problem. There were so many issues to choose from: climate change, access to education, global healthcare. But in that moment, one issue stood out above the rest: the global refugee crisis. It was an issue that had been at the forefront of international discourse for years, yet it had been largely neglected in terms of sustainable, long-term solutions. Refugees, particularly those displaced by war, persecution, and climate change, were living in conditions that were both inhumane and unsustainable. The world's response had been fragmented, with some countries doing more than others, but it was clear that no single nation, or group of nations, could tackle the crisis alone. "Elon," Maya said, after hearing his thoughts, "what if we used the Humanity Network to tackle the refugee crisis? What if we brought together people, organizations, governments, local leaders, and helped create a global initiative that not only addresses immediate relief but also focuses on long-term integration and development for refugees?" The room fell silent as the magnitude of the idea sank in. It was a bold move, one that would require not only international cooperation but also the commitment of countless organizations, from NGOs to governments to private businesses. But Elon could see it clearly now. This was the moment they could prove the Humanity Network's power. If they could tackle something as massive and complex as the refugee crisis, the network would no longer just be a tool for humanitarian aid, it would be a beacon of hope for the future. "Let's do it," Elon said, his voice filled with resolve. "We'll start by working with the UN and the world's largest refugee organizations. We'll create a platform where governments, local communities, and non-governmental organizations can come together to not only provide immediate aid but also work on long-term solutions for integration, education, employment, housing, healthcare. We'll create a model that can be replicated worldwide." The plan was set in motion almost immediately. Working through the Humanity Network, the team reached out to international organizations like the UNHCR, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, as well as local governments and humanitarian organizations already on the ground in refugee camps across the world. Over the next few months, the project took shape, with hundreds of different groups, from local activists to multinational corporations, contributing their expertise. The first phase of the initiative was centered around providing basic necessities, food, water, shelter, and healthcare, while the second phase focused on integrating refugees into local communities through education and job programs. The Humanity Network allowed for real-time updates on the status of each refugee camp, offering transparency and accountability. Volunteers and experts were connected instantly through the platform, while organizations collaborated to provide resources and support. However, despite the early successes, the resistance continued to grow. Governments wary of ceding control over the refugee process to a global network began to raise objections. Some accused Elon of attempting to undermine national sovereignty, claiming that refugees should be handled within the framework of each nation's policies. Others worried that the Humanity Network's success would inspire similar initiatives in other areas, disrupting traditional power structures. As tensions escalated, Elon knew that the success of this initiative, and by extension, the Humanity Network, hinged on one thing: the ability to shift the narrative. They had to show the world that the refugee crisis was not just a political issue, but a human one. The stakes were too high for the world to remain divided. One evening, while reflecting on the progress of the refugee initiative, Elon received a message from X. It read, "Dad, how are the refugees doing? Are they happy?" Elon smiled, feeling both a sense of pride and sorrow. His son, in his innocent way, had captured the essence of what this was all about. It wasn't just about solving a problem, it was about improving people's lives. "They're safe, buddy," Elon replied. "And they're starting to build new lives. But there's still a lot of work to do. We're just getting started." As he hit send, Elon realized that this was more than just a test for the Humanity Network. It was a test for the world itself, whether humanity could come together, not just for the big projects, but for the small, everyday struggles of people who had been forgotten for far too long. The global refugee initiative was gaining traction faster than anyone could have expected. Over the next few months, the Humanity Network became a lifeline for millions of refugees around the world. From the moment the platform launched, its impact was undeniable. Refugee camps, once isolated and struggling for resources, became interconnected hubs of collaboration. Local communities rallied to support displaced families, offering them not only the essentials but also the tools to rebuild their lives. The media, once critical of Musk's network, now found itself reporting stories of hope, resilience, and unexpected partnerships. The power of the Humanity Network was on full display, bridging divides between countries, organizations, and individuals. The first wave of success was undeniable. Refugees were receiving medical care, children were attending schools, and families were being integrated into the workforce. It was a testament to the potential of global collaboration, and more importantly, the potential of humanity when given the tools to act. But even as the initiative gained momentum, the forces of resistance never truly disappeared. The leaders of several powerful nations, particularly those whose policies had been historically strict regarding refugee resettlement, began to speak out more vocally. Despite the positive changes taking place, they warned against letting a decentralized platform like the Humanity Network take the lead in global governance. One such leader, Chancellor Ingrid Bauer of Germany, a longtime critic of Musk's approach, issued a stark warning during a press conference. While the efforts to support refugees are commendable, we cannot allow unregulated, private organizations to dictate international policy, she said. The world must not be governed by a digital platform, no matter how noble its intentions. Elon sat in his office watching the broadcast. He had expected resistance, but this was different. This was direct opposition from a world leader. It was clear that the growing influence of the Humanity Network was unsettling powerful individuals who were used to making the rules. And as he had anticipated, they were now pulling out all the stops to halt the momentum. In a series of high-level meetings, Elon and his team began to discuss the next steps. They had already proven the Humanity Network's worth in the field, but now they needed to fortify their position and push back against those who wanted to shut it down. It wasn't just about providing solutions anymore, it was about securing the network's legitimacy in the eyes of the global political establishment. "I'm tired of defending this platform to people who only see it as a threat to their control," Elon said, his voice tinged with frustration. "But I know this is the right thing to do. We've shown the world what's possible, and we can't let these power structures get in the way." Maya Patel, still working with local communities in Uganda, had a suggestion. "Elon, instead of fighting them directly, what if we start involving them? What if we bring in global leaders, people who've been resistant, and get them to experience the impact of the network firsthand?" Elon thought about it for a moment. "What do you mean?" "We can organize a series of summits and field visits for influential leaders to see the network in action. If we show them how it's helping real people, how it's saving lives and restoring dignity, they won't be able to deny its potential. We need them to understand that this is bigger than politics. It's about humanity." Elon nodded, feeling a surge of hope. It was a simple idea, but it was exactly what they needed. They couldn't just keep making the case through data and press releases. They needed to invite these leaders to witness the change firsthand. The first of these summits took place in Geneva, where representatives from major global institutions, including the UN, World Health Organization, and Red Cross, convened to discuss the future of the refugee initiative. Elon was there, as were members of his team, alongside leaders of various organizations that had partnered with the Humanity Network. When the summit began, the room was filled with skepticism. Some leaders, like Chancellor Bauer, still held firm in their belief that the Humanity Network was an overly idealistic, dangerous concept that could never replace the well-established systems in place. But as the summit unfolded and Elon showcased the real-world impact of the network, something changed. Videos of refugees who had received medical treatment, children who had gone back to school, and families who had found housing thanks to the collaborative efforts of local communities began to surface. The leaders watched as stories unfolded of refugees now employed in sustainable agricultural projects, generating income for their families, and contributing to the economies of their host countries. The turning point came when Dr. Ricardo Sanchez, a leading humanitarian from the WHO, shared his experience working in a refugee camp in Jordan. "I've never seen anything like this before," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "The Humanity Network has given us access to real-time data that allowed us to identify and treat outbreaks of disease before they became a full-scale crisis. It's the kind of efficiency we've been waiting for, and it's happening right now, in real time. This platform is saving lives." Elon watched the room closely as Dr. Sanchez spoke. There was no denying it now. The Humanity Network wasn't just a theoretical solution, it was working. And as each leader witnessed the positive outcomes firsthand, the air in the room began to shift. The skepticism turned into curiosity, and for the first time, the possibility of true collaboration seemed within reach. 2 weeks later, Elon received a phone call. It was from Chancellor Bauer. "Elon," her voice was cautious, but there was a new tone of openness. "I've had time to think. After hearing the stories from the summit and seeing the impact this network has had in refugee camps, I'm willing to have a conversation about the future of the Humanity Network. Let's talk. The conversation that followed was tense, but constructive. They discussed ways to integrate the Humanity Network into existing international frameworks, finding common ground between the platform's decentralized approach and the established systems that govern refugee relief efforts. Elon knew that this was only the beginning. There would still be pushback, still be obstacles, but for the first time, there was an acknowledgement that the Humanity Network had the power to change the world. And that, he believed, was the most important victory of all. As the conversation ended, Elon looked out of his office window, feeling a sense of cautious optimism. The road ahead was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: the Humanity Network had made its mark. It had sparked a conversation, not just about technology or innovation, but about the future of global cooperation. And for the first time, that future seemed just a little bit closer. The victory at the Geneva summit had been a crucial turning point, but the road to solidifying the Humanity Network's role in the world was far from clear. While the meeting with Chancellor Bauer was a step in the right direction, it was just one piece of the puzzle. The world's power structures were vast and entrenched, and even the most compelling success stories from the Humanity Network couldn't erase decades of political and economic realities. In the weeks that followed, Elon and his team faced a whirlwind of meetings with global leaders. Some were enthusiastic about the potential of the Humanity Network, eager to see it scale globally, while others remained cautious, skeptical about how much power they were willing to cede to a private entity. The discussions were heated and filled with political maneuvering. Some leaders demanded more control, others insisted on conditions, and a few tried to undermine the entire initiative, seeing it as a direct threat to their national policies. But amidst the noise, Elon remained focused on the core of the mission: to create a truly interconnected, collaborative world where the barriers that separated humanity were dismantled, and people came together to solve the pressing challenges of our time. For him, the complexity of the political landscape only deepened his resolve. The obstacles were real, but they also made the mission more urgent. One of the key issues they had to tackle was the balance between local sovereignty and global cooperation. Governments wanted to maintain their own control over refugee policies, not wanting to relinquish authority to a decentralized network that operated outside their borders. For many of them, the idea of allowing the Humanity Network to play a direct role in governance was simply unacceptable. "We need to ensure that national governments have a say in how the Humanity Network operates," President Anwar Hussein of Pakistan said during one meeting. "While the network is providing assistance, it's important to remember that it's not a global government. We must preserve national sovereignty." Elon understood the sentiment. Governments needed to maintain their legitimacy and control over their own territories. But he also knew that if the Humanity Network was to succeed on a global scale, it would need to be more than just a tool for temporary aid. It needed to be a lasting, adaptable framework for cooperation. "Absolutely," Elon replied, his tone measured but firm. "The Humanity Network isn't about replacing governments. It's about working alongside them to ensure that solutions are accessible, scalable, and sustainable. Our goal is to give people the tools they need to rebuild their lives, not to undermine the authority of sovereign nations." The conversation shifted, and they began discussing practical ways to work together. One idea that came to the forefront was the creation of local councils made up of both government representatives and members of the Humanity Network team. These councils would ensure that the network's operations were aligned with local policies and needs, while also providing a channel for international support and collaboration. While this was an important step, it also highlighted the broader challenge the Humanity Network faced: convincing a deeply divided world to cooperate. The political dynamics were constantly shifting, and while some leaders saw the platform as an opportunity, others feared it as a Trojan horse for global control. Despite the ongoing debates, there were tangible signs of progress. The Humanity Network had already begun piloting new solutions in countries like Lebanon and Bangladesh, where refugee camps were among the most overcrowded and under-resourced in the world. These pilots involved a more integrated approach, combining access to education, job training, and healthcare with support for local economies and infrastructure. Refugees were not only surviving, they were thriving, creating small businesses, and participating in their new communities. One of the most powerful stories came from a refugee camp in Bangladesh, where a group of young adults, many of whom had been living in the camp for years, began using the Humanity Network to start a small solar energy project. They received funding and training through the platform, and within 6 months, they were generating enough energy to power parts of the camp. The success of the project was celebrated by both refugees and local officials, who were amazed at the initiative and entrepreneurial spirit of the displaced people. This story, along with dozens of others, began to turn the tide of skepticism. The Humanity Network wasn't just about helping people survive, it was about empowering them to become active participants in rebuilding their futures. And this shift in perspective was something that governments, businesses, and international organizations could no longer ignore. But as the network's influence grew, so too did the pushback. Some of the world's most powerful corporations, whose interests were tied to global supply chains and resource distribution, began to question the growing influence of the Humanity Network. They worried that if the platform succeeded in creating a truly interconnected world, it would disrupt the traditional flow of capital, control, and power. One such corporation was A-Xii, a multinational conglomerate that had long dominated the energy and technology sectors. The company had been publicly neutral on the Humanity Network's work, but behind closed doors, it was taking steps to challenge Musk's vision. Elon received word that A-Xii had been quietly lobbying against the network, leveraging its massive influence to pressure governments into limiting their cooperation with the platform. "Elon," said Javier Ortega during a strategy meeting, "we've got a new fight on our hands. A-Xii is mobilizing its resources to prevent the Humanity Network from gaining more ground. If we're going to succeed, we need to prepare for a battle on multiple fronts." Elon's mind raced. He had anticipated opposition from governments, but corporate interests were a different beast entirely. These companies had far-reaching influence, often surpassing that of individual nations. If they were willing to take a stand against the Humanity Network, it would be a battle unlike any he had faced before. "We need to get ahead of this," Elon said, his voice low but resolute. "If they want a fight, we'll give it to them. But we do it on our terms. We'll focus on the people, the ones who are benefiting from this network, and let them speak for us. If we can show the world that this is about people, not politics or profits, then we'll win." The fight ahead would be long and difficult, but Elon knew that they were on the right path. The world was changing, and while the old systems of power were reluctant to give way, the undeniable progress made through the Humanity Network was a force that could not be ignored. And no matter how strong the resistance, Elon Musk was determined to keep pushing forward. As he looked out over the horizon, he couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. The path to global unity was riddled with obstacles, but the very act of pushing against those barriers was creating something new, a new world order, one where people were empowered to collaborate across borders, cultures, and politics. And this, Elon knew, was just the beginning. As the weeks passed, Elon's determination to make the Humanity Network a global institution only intensified. The fight against corporate giants and political leaders became more entrenched. But Elon was no stranger to adversity, and the opposition, as formidable as it was, only reinforced his belief in the mission's importance. Every challenge felt like a step forward, each setback was an opportunity to push harder and break through. The pressure from A-Xii was escalating. The corporation had significant sway in global energy markets and had been using its influence to undermine support for the Humanity Network. Their executives were on the offensive, meeting with governments, non-profits, and international institutions, lobbying against what they saw as a disruptive force in their carefully orchestrated systems. But even as A-Xii worked behind the scenes, there were cracks in their armor. As part of their efforts to destabilize the network, A-Xii had tried to block initiatives that allowed the Humanity Network to tap into renewable energy resources. But much to their dismay, the very refugees that A-Xii had overlooked were proving to be innovators. The solar projects in Bangladesh, the small but effective wind energy systems in refugee camps across Lebanon, and the growing number of sustainable initiatives within the camps were becoming more than just a way of survival. They were slowly morphing into a movement, a symbol of how people who were once considered the world's most vulnerable could become active agents in reshaping their future. One of the biggest breakthroughs occurred in a refugee camp in Kenya. A group of displaced engineers, many of them former energy experts from Syria, had used the Humanity Network to create a groundbreaking solar-powered water filtration system. This innovation, which turns sunlight into clean drinking water, caught the attention of both environmental organizations and governments around the world. The project's success was so striking that it quickly gained international recognition. And it wasn't just the technology that was remarkable, it was the story behind it. These refugees had worked together across nationalities, cultures, and languages, uniting to tackle one of the world's most pressing issues. This wasn't just about aid, it was about empowerment. It was proof that when given the right tools, people who had lost everything could still innovate, create, and lead. The global media took notice. The Humanity Network was no longer a niche initiative, it was becoming a global force for change. The narrative that had once painted the network as an idealistic dream was slowly being rewritten by real-world success stories that were impossible to ignore. Elon sat at a small conference table, his laptop open, surrounded by his core team. They had just received the latest update from Kenya, and the news was overwhelmingly positive. The solar-powered filtration system was being adopted in other parts of the world, and governments were reaching out to discuss how they could replicate this success in their own countries. "This is it," Maya Patel said, her voice filled with excitement. "The whole world is starting to see what we've been talking about. This isn't just a charity. This is a paradigm shift." Elon smiled. "It's not just about the technology. It's about the people. We're showing that displaced individuals, who were once seen as helpless, can be the solution. They can drive innovation and economic growth." But even as the optimism grew, there was still a long road ahead. The corporate opposition was unrelenting. A-Xii Corp had launched a full-scale public relations campaign to discredit the Humanity Network, focusing on the idea that the initiative was undermining global economic systems. They argued that the network was fostering dependence rather than encouraging self-sufficiency. One of the most vocal critics, A-Xii Corp's CEO, Robert Davidson, appeared on a live broadcast to denounce the Humanity Network. "The Humanity Network is a noble cause, but it's an unrealistic one," Davidson said. "By relying on a decentralized, unregulated platform, we are eroding the very fabric of international trade, markets, and innovation. We need structure, not chaos." Elon watched the broadcast from his office, his fingers steepled in thought. He had been expecting this. A-Xii Corp was a multi-billion-dollar corporation with vast resources, and they had a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. But Elon knew that the tide was turning. As more stories from the refugee camps continued to surface, stories of people creating businesses, improving local economies, and lifting entire communities out of poverty, the narrative around the Humanity Network was beginning to shift. As the next round of global summits approached, Elon knew that it was time to take the initiative to the next level. He decided to take a more aggressive approach, a worldwide campaign to highlight the stories of refugees who had turned their lives around, and to frame the Humanity Network not as a charity, but as an economic and social catalyst. The campaign, titled "Stories of Resilience," featured refugees from around the world who had used the Humanity Network to improve their lives. From the Syrian engineer in Kenya to the displaced farmers in Colombia who were now selling crops on international markets, these were stories of ingenuity, persistence, and hope. They were stories of people not waiting for a handout, but grabbing hold of the future with both hands. The campaign launched with an emotional video that showcased the real-world impacts of the Humanity Network. It was shot in the refugee camps themselves, with footage of families rebuilding their homes, children attending school, and young entrepreneurs starting small businesses. The video ended with a simple but powerful message: people are the solution, not the problem. The impact was immediate. The campaign went viral, sparking a global conversation. The media, once skeptical, was now covering the success stories with a new level of admiration. The economic and social potential of the Humanity Network was impossible to ignore. In every corner of the globe, people were beginning to understand the power of collaboration, not just among nations, but among individuals, regardless of their circumstances. In the following weeks, more and more leaders from both the political and business sectors began to come forward, offering support. Even governments that had initially resisted the Humanity Network began to soften their stance. Some were still wary, but the undeniable success of the network in refugee camps was proving to be a game-changer. Elon had always known that the Humanity Network's success wouldn't be about him or any single entity, it was about the collective effort of everyone involved. And slowly, piece by piece, the world was starting to embrace that vision. Sitting in his office one evening, watching the latest updates from the campaign, Elon felt a sense of fulfillment. It wasn't about winning a battle, it was about creating a world where the fight itself was unnecessary. And in that moment, he realized that they weren't just changing policies or systems. They were changing hearts and minds. The world was moving in the right direction. The Humanity Network was no longer just an idea. It was a movement, one that had the power to unite the world, one person at a time. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?